Hi, welcome to Vlog Friday. Vlog Friday, it's one of my favorite days. Thanks so much for joining me on Truth Matters with Terry McCarthy. Today I want to tell you about something that happened to me a long time ago in 1986. In 1986, my university in China invited me back to teach for summer. I'd come home to the United States to enroll in a master's degree program at the University of Oklahoma. So the summer was perfect. I was ready to go back to China and do some summer teaching. And I talked to my parents and I found out that the train across China from Finland was cheaper than actually airplanes, the cost of the flight. So my plan was get a flight to Finland, get on the Trans-Siberian, ride across Russia and pray for Russia, land in Beijing, and go teach at my university. Simple enough. And I learned that if you're getting a ticket on the Trans-Siberian, you can get all your visas, everything you need right there at the station when you purchase your Trans-Siberian ticket. It was a perfect plan, and I was so excited. I'd had such a burden for the USSR, and I'd always wanted to live there, but I was never academically qualified or hooked up with somebody to know how to get into the USSR and teach. So I thought the next best thing would be to ride that train 14 days across the USSR, land in Beijing, and start my summer teaching. Perfect plan. I landed in Finland. I landed in Helsinki, got settled into my hostel, which required me to be out of the building from 10 until 4. It was a Sunday, and so I looked up in one of those tourist magazines, and I thought, I'm going to go to church. Who knows? Maybe something wonderful will happen there. So I found a church called Solemn Church, and I'm not very good at map reading, but I figured out how to get there, and I walked. It was about twice as long as I expected it. Instead of a 20-minute walk, it ended up being about a 40-minute walk. Solemn was a beautiful all-wooden church that looked a lot like a ship because it was right on the pier. So I went in to the building late. Services had already started. I was drenched because it rains in Finland. It was April 1986, rain. So I go walking into the all-wooden building and my tennis shoes squeak. They squeak so loudly that the pastor stopped. It's about 600 people there. The pastor stopped and let me get seated. And then I was okay. And then he could start talking again because it was a loud squeak. And then everybody realized that I wasn't Finnish. I wasn't a person from Finland. And so one of the ushers came over to me and he said, you need to move to where we have English translation. So I got up to walk again, my feet squeaking so loudly and echoing off of that wooden church that the pastor had to stop again. What I'm trying to tell you is I called a lot of attention to myself and it was unwanted. So I sit down, I get my headset on, I hear English, and the pastor looks at me and goes, are you okay? And I go, yeah, I'm okay. Whew, that was embarrassing. The sermon was actually on missions, which is such a part of my life and so important to me. And I really felt the touch of the Lord because I was thinking of all the days for me to be here. I was there at their Mission Sunday. They had flags from every country flying around the sanctuary. It was really touching. Afterwards, a lovely couple came running up to me. His name was Imo. He was Finnish. Her name was Marianne, and she was Austrian. They had married. They'd met in Holland, married, and were now living in Finland and had 2 small children. Marianne said, where are you from? And I said, I'm from the United States, as if they couldn't figure that out. And she said, you're coming to my house today for lunch. And Imo said, where are you staying? And I told him I was staying at the Olympics because the Olympics had been in Finland. I was staying in the Olympiad youth hostel. And he goes, no, that's no good. And Marianne goes, I'll take public transportation. You take her over there and you get her suitcases. Terry, you're coming home with us. Well, that was a wonderful invitation because actually I couldn't really afford staying in the youth hostel. So we went and got my stuff. Imo demanded my deposit back. We got over to their apartment. It was a beautiful apartment. She had coffee ready. We had a wonderful brunch. And we started visiting, and they asked me, what are you doing in Finland? And I said, well, I'm going to get on the Trans-Siberian Railroad. I want to ride it across the USSR, and then I'll start teaching summer school in China. I used to teach in China, and my university asked me to come back and teach summer classes. And that was my plan. And Imo said, did you hear what happened yesterday? And I said, no, I was on the plane from the United States to Helsinki. So no, I didn't get any news. He said, well, there's a problem. I go, what's wrong? And he goes, all ground transportation is canceled. There are no planes, there are no trains going in or out of Russia. I said, what happened? He goes, I don't know, but radioactivity in both Sweden and Finland is off the charts. It's dangerous levels. And he said, in fact, most of the presidents and prime ministers are asking us to stay indoors. I said, well, I really feel like I got to get to China, and I really felt like I was supposed to ride the train. And he goes, well, there's no trains going in or out. I said, well, what's the best way to get to China? And he said, well, I think you can fly, but it's horribly expensive, and there probably aren't any tickets left. So Monday, he drove me down to the center of town on his way to work. I went into a Aeroflot office, and I asked if they had any tickets from Helsinki to Beijing. And they said they did, but it was only for what they called hard currency. Well, fortunately for me, my dad had given me an American Express card to use for emergencies only. And he meant it, for emergencies only, life and death. But that was the only way that Aeroflot would sell me that ticket to Beijing, is if I used my American Express card. I said, well, I don't have any of my visas, and the visa that I do have for China I was thinking I was going to go by train, so this visa is not current for 2 weeks, and I can't sit here in Finland for 2 weeks. First of all, Finland's really expensive, and I don't know anybody here. So the gal tells me, and of course she's classical Russian, you buy or don't buy, I don't care, but if you buy, you must use American Express. Hard currency. Hard currency. So I'm like, okay. And I bought the ticket. I bought the ticket to Beijing with my dad's American Express card. Oh, my word. So I took the ticket, and I went back to Imo's and Marianne's. Imo came home for dinner, and they asked me what happened. I said, I got a ticket. He said, I'm shocked. And I go, well, I had to use my American Express. Not so shocked. The Russians were starving for hard currency. The ruble was plummeting every day. So Imo said, well, now you've got a visa problem. And I said, I sure do. Do you know where the Chinese embassy is? And he started cracking up laughing. He goes, you're not going to get a visa from the Chinese embassy in 24 hours. I mean, when does your flight leave? And my flight left actually in 48 hours. He was exaggerating. This was Monday. My flight was leaving on Wednesday. He goes, it takes like 30 days to process those. I said, Imo, how do you know so much? How do you know so much about visas and tickets? And Imo said, you don't know? I'm head of Finland's International Foreign Office. I am the head of international affairs for all of Finland. So the guy knew exactly what he was talking about. I sat there at dinner. I could barely eat. I felt sick. There's no refunds for my ticket. And Marianne goes, what do you think you're going to do? Should you just go back home? Maybe you can just explain to your parents what happened. I said, Marianne, I can't go home. I know that God has called me to Beijing. I'm going to go there and teach. I already promised my university. It's just I don't know how to get there. And now that I've got this ticket across Russia, I'm in a bind. But you know what? I love Corrie ten Boom. And Corrie ten Boom has spoken many times of God's faithfulness in difficult and horrible situations where there seemed no way out, and God always provided. All she had to do is obey. Marianne looked at Imo, and Imo looked at Marianne, and Marianne goes, sorry, Terry, but you're no Corrie ten Boom. We know her. When they lived in Holland, they had become really good friends with Corrie ten Boom, and they knew her personally. And Imo goes, I don't mean to be insulting, but do you really think you're like Corrie ten Boom? Because you're not. And they were right. What a foolish girl. I was so stupid. I thought I heard God's voice. I asked my church to pray. I talked to my parents about it. I thought I was supposed to go to Finland. I thought I was supposed to cross over USSR. I thought I was supposed to be in Beijing to teach summer school. And everything that I thought was falling around, crumbling beside me. No answers, no hope, and now I was greatly in debt by about $1,700. And in 1986, $1,700 was a lot of money. Tuesday morning came. I almost said, "What can I do for you today?" I said, "Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to go to the Chinese embassy and at least try to get a visa." He goes, "It's a waste of time, but I'll be glad to do it." So Imo drove me out to the Chinese embassy. I went in. It was a beautiful embassy, very small, only probably about 5 or 6 workers there. I walk in. The receptionist spoke to me. I spoke to her in Chinese, and I told her that I needed a visa, that I was supposed to be teaching in Beijing this summer. As I'm talking to her, she's asking me to fill out these different forms and all this paperwork, and she asked to see if I had my letter of invitation, but I didn't, because I'd used my letter of invitation back in Chicago to get my Chinese visa. So I sat down, started filling out the forms, and started getting a real pit in my stomach. Ima was sitting there with me, patiently, the way you do with a small child who doesn't understand what reality looks like. After just a few minutes, I heard someone enter into the reception area. And he stood there for a minute, and I saw him, but I just caught him out of the corner of my eye. And all of a sudden, I heard this, "Huaqi! 这是你的! Huaqi!" That's my Chinese name. And I looked up, and the ambassador to Finland from China was the brother of one of my students, and I had actually eaten in his home. I looked up. I couldn't believe it. I go, "Lao Li," and he goes, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Lao Li, I have had the biggest problem. I'm supposed to be going back to Changchun to teach summer school, but there's no Trans-Siberian Railroad because there's something in the air. There's some problem. There's some catastrophe, and all trains are canceled. But I got this airline ticket, but it leaves Wednesday." He goes, "Huaqi, you know my family. We love you very much. You don't worry about anything. I take care of it." He took my passport. He went to the back. He was gone maybe 15 minutes. He comes back waving the passport because the ink was still wet. And he said, "Huaqi, here's your visa. I'm so glad you're going back to China. Please tell my sister I said hello and that we're doing okay." I took the visa. I got in the car with Imo. We were driving back to the small apartment. And Imo said, "I am dumbfounded. I don't have any words. How in the world did you know that man?" I said, "His sister was one of my students, and I had actually been to his home and eaten. I've had a meal at his home." And he goes, "And that's the ambassador to Finland from China." Yeah. So we get back to the apartment. Imo drops me off. I go upstairs. I tell Marianne I got the visa, and she was shocked. The next morning, it was time for me to get on my Aeroflot plane, my Aeroflot flight from Helsinki to Beijing. We're sitting at the airport, and Marianne gave me an envelope. She hugged me. She gave me a small sack. She hugged me and kissed me, said it was nice to meet me, prayed over me, and left. After she'd gone, I opened up my sack, and there was this wonderful collection of Finnish chocolate. And if you've never had Finnish chocolate, it's one of the most delicious chocolates in the world. There was a small envelope, and I opened it up, and she said, "Dear Terry, I was so wrong, because Corrie always taught us it's not great faith in God, it's faith in a great God. You're more like Corrie than I realized. You're more like Corrie than I realized." And she and Imo had stuck $800 in my envelope. Oh my goodness. So I flew across the USSR. I landed in Beijing, a place I was very familiar with. I got a hotel, and I got a USA Today newspaper, and I opened it up. And Chernobyl was what had happened. Chernobyl was why the borders were closed. Chernobyl was why there was no travel and the travel ban was so extensive. I don't know what God is doing in our midst in this coronavirus. I don't know what he's doing in your particular life or how your plans may have changed recently. But I do know this. God is faithful and he is good. And there is no plan that he puts into place that the enemy can thwart or stop. Our God is faithful. And just like Corrie ten Boom said, it's not great faith that makes a difference in our lives. It's not great faith that moves mountains. It's not great faith that changes our circumstances. It's faith in a great God. Well, I hope that encouraged you today. It still cracks me up that out of, how many billions of people in China, I run into the guy who's the brother of one of my students. Oh, well, may you be blessed. I love Vlog Fridays, and I hope you'll subscribe. So subscribe to my YouTube channel, Truth Matters, Terry McCarthy. Please give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Leave a comment and give me any suggestions. Blessings to you, and thank you so much for joining me for Truth Matters.